Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. We are here to help you understand the unique cultural needs of Gen Z and Generation Alpha. I'm your host, Chuck Peters, and I'm so glad you're here today. This is the Etch Next Gen Ministry Podcast. No matter what season you're in your ministry can be difficult. There are so many things to know and do and different ways we can grow. But there is no time when that is more evident and more challenging than when you are new in your role. So listeners, this episode is for you today if you are a new leader or if you lead someone who is a new leader in their role, whether you're leading in preschool, kids, middle school, or high school, or at the next gen level. If you're new in your role, this episode is for you. We're going to talk today about how to put first things first as you step into a new position or move into a new church. And we're going to be joined today by two great friends, Delanee Williams and Amanda Mejias, who are both members of our equipping team here within Lifeway. These gals have traveled, and they do travel actively, teaching and training ministry leaders around the country at many levels, advanced level training that happens at SBC state retreats and gatherings and events at churches, but also training that happens at conferences all over the country. Places like Children's Pastors Conference, our own Etch Conference, the Youth Pastors Summit, YPS. For those of you who are out and about in those circles, we are in many, many places all over the country, whether they are Lifeway events or not. Delanee and Amanda and their partners in our equipping team are also there. I also want to mention that in addition to the work they do in training, Delanee and Amanda are also accomplished ministry thought leaders in other ways. Amanda Mejias has written many Bible study resources and books for leaders in girls ministry in particular. And she hosts the His Glory, Her Good podcast. So I would encourage you, if you are in girls ministry, you really need to get to know Amanda. If you are in children's or preschool ministry, you must know Delanee Williams. So with all that said, welcome to this conversation today about what we might do to get first things first when you are new in your role. Well, I am joined today by two incredible friends. Amanda Mejias and Delanee Williams are both part of our equipping team here at Lifeway. One of the things I love about what we do here is we don't just make resources. We have a whole team that's dedicated to training and equipping ministry leaders. Whether you use our resources or not, we love you and we want to equip you for success in ministry. That is what Delanee and Amanda get to do all the time. And I'm so excited to have you both here today on the podcast to talk a little bit about people who might be new in their roles and what you guys do to equip them. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. So fun.
So
yes, thanks, Chuck.
Tell me just a little bit, or tell our audience a little bit about what each of you do. So you are Delanee in the kid space and Amanda in the student space. You work together as a team, but you often divide and conquer depending on the event. You do many things. So give us a little bit of the bigger scope of what the vision of your team is and the mission of your team. And then we'll come back to this idea of for those who are new in their roles.
Delanee, you kick us off, girl.
All right. So I like to say we get to be a minister to the ministers or church leaders. So a lot of times that is being live in-person trainings. And so we'll get to go to different places around the country and have events and encourage and equip leaders. We do things like podcasts, webinars, and also work on resources that help encourage and equip our church leaders.
So some really of those are events that other people host where our team comes and leads conference sessions and workshops and things like that. Other times there are events that we put on. Amanda, what would you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say events is a big part of it. I think anytime we can create a community, I would say that has been one of the most fun parts of my job, leading women in youth ministry and girls ministry leaders, is helping develop a place where ministers feel like they belong, that they can come and ask questions if they need a safe person to process something. That idea of being a minister to ministers is often way beyond just an hour training. But hey, you now have someone's email that you can call and you want someone to pray for you. And listen, I've got no buy into your church. And so you could tell me and process whatever you need to. And as somebody who just doesn't just want to sell you curriculum, but as somebody who wants to care for your heart, and somebody that loves you and wants you to be in ministry for the long run.
I had a friend who was a former equipper on here at Lifeway, who said, Bill Emiott, who said something along the lines of, you need to have a best friend or a confidant who is not in your church. Somebody on the outside that you can talk to who is wise and cares for you, but is not embedded, who has a different pastor than you do, I think is the way that he said it. Right. So important. Yeah. And so to clarify for our listeners, when people think of training that comes from within Lifeway, I think many people who don't know otherwise might think, oh, they train you on how to use Lifeway materials, right? Totally. That's not what y'all are doing. You guys do a different thing. You are ministers to ministers. So you're teaching strategies and principles and concepts that are ministry skills, not how to use the gospel project.
100%.
Yeah, Chuck, very, very practical things. And a lot of it we share from our experience from serving on church staffs, but also our experience perspective now as volunteers in our ministries at our churches. Mm-hmm. So like you said, it's very practical, the strategies, things that people can put into place now in their ministries, and that will help them be a better leader.
Great. So we're hoping to get really practical today, which is why I'm so excited to have the two of you speak to this subset of an audience. So we're in the midst of a series on leadership, and we're talking to mature leaders, people who've been in leadership for a long time. But this particular episode, we wanted to set aside some conversation about, or specifically geared towards those who are new in their role. A new leader, whether that's a next-gen leader or a student ministry leader, a kids or preschool leader. We wanted to hear from you as you interact with new to ministry. And maybe we should talk just a little bit about new to ministry, because that means something here at Lifeway. How would you describe the new to ministry training that you guys do?
Yeah. Okay. So we do both youth ministry, new to ministry training throughout the year. Delanee does kids ministry, new to ministry training. And that it's really fun because sometimes you think, okay, it's just a bunch of 20-year-olds who are showing up fresh out of college.
Right.
And we're seeing more and more in the youth ministry spaces. These could be 40-year-olds who have made a call to shift their entire career, and they are brand new into the church, into the spaces. Or maybe it's somebody who's been doing kids ministry, they're now in youth ministry, or even vice versa. We've seen it backwards too. Yeah. And so it's really fun getting to talk to people who are not necessarily new to the church, but are new to their role, and getting to meet them right where they're at. Just again, say, hey, we're here to partner with you and to encourage you and to help you create something to build off of, because those first few years are foundational years. And those foundational years, the way that you said it, will really lead to the path of what your ministries will look like and your years of serving, what that will look like. So it's really fun.
I think also not only is it getting to hear all those things, all the information, but like as Amanda was saying earlier, they get to connect with us. So they know someone at Lifeway. If they have a question, it's a partnership. I like to say it's the beginning of a partnership for the future. But it's also a great opportunity to network with other leaders, many times that are in their area. So if they don't have a friend that doesn't share the same pastor, then a lot of times we see where those at that time. But I think it's something also about understanding and realizing you aren't the only one experiencing those challenges.
Yeah.
So there's that, oh, wow, you experienced this too. And so they don't feel alone whenever they realize that, that everyone experiences similar challenges.
And we have led Essentials conferences and new to ministry conferences for many years under different names sometimes, right? Some of those happen in Nashville at our headquarters, others of them all around the country at different events and locations. Amanda, you're about to say something.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, when it comes to like being new to ministry, I do think that you think that somehow people who work at Lifeway or other, ministers have been doing 20 years, that we've somehow figured it all out, that we're coming across as like these like experts. And so being new into ministry, you feel like there's a level of feeling like you have to prove yourself those first few years. And there's also a level of feeling so inadequate and ill equipped. And I don't know why. I think God got the wrong guy for the job, right?
Yeah.
And reality is we get to come alongside them and say, and when you're doing it in a community, like Delanee was saying, you're sitting in round tables and there's people who have just started ministry across the town from you. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, they're figuring out, like, they still have questions and they still have struggles, and those teenagers are difficult in their ministry too. Like, it really is. It just brings about and that's how the kingdom of God is supposed to be, is not like this, here we are and you are the loathsome, new people who don't know what you're doing. In reality, it's like, man, we're brothers and sisters and we're here to equip and encourage and build up each other.
And everyone's trying to figure it out together.
No one has arrived. That is for sure. We're all faking it till we make it.
But these new to ministry events, conferences that we host and that we lead, give you the opportunity, if you're new in your role, to meet others who are and to ask those questions in a safe place, right?
Totally.
Sometimes when we're at our job, we may be hesitant to express that we don't know something. And it's great to have a safe place and what really turns into a cohort of friends. I regularly, as I travel, will run into someone. I talked to a pastor at SBC conference this year in Dallas, and he said, you know what? I attended a kids ministry essentials 8 years ago, and that meant so much to me. It set me up for success. Now I'm the lead pastor at my church, and I'm sending my people back. So we'll tease just a little bit that those conferences exist. There's different ways to find out about them, where they are, when they are, and how you can be involved. We'll drop contact information for Delanee and Amanda in the show notes if you want to get in touch with them to find out how you can be a part or how you can send someone who may be new on your team to one of our new to ministry conferences. It's so worth doing. Now, that said, let's talk a bit about the kinds of things that people need to know when they're new in their role. So for those listeners who are new, or a leader who has a person who's moving into a new role on their team, someone that they lead, what are some of those things, guys? You mentioned, that we often walk into a new role, I'll say it this way, and when we don't know what we don't know. Right?
Yeah.
And we may feel insecure or inadequate. Amanda, you said you got the wrong guy. I don't know if this is right.
Hold
Sometimes we walk in feeling like, I got this. And all of a sudden we get blindsided with all the other things that we didn't know came
You're like,
with
wait
the
a
role.
second. This was out of the job description.
Right. I'm really good at leading a student Bible study. Oh, what's all this other stuff I have to do with budgeting and training and all the
deal with
choosing
volunteers.
curriculum, volunteers. Mm-hmm. So would you two run down what are some of those big things, the long list of stuff that we may not be aware that we are not aware of?
Well, I think when it comes to, like you were saying, okay, I know I'm going to be working with kids or students, depending on what your responsibilities are. Probably realize I'm going to be working also with parents somewhat and volunteers. I don't think people realize that a lot of your time is going to be spent on the administrative end and working more with adults. And so I'd say that part of it, but a lot of times safety and security, curriculum, what are they going to study? When are they going to study? How does all of that work all together? I think a lot also pastoral care. People may not realize that really have that pastoral care part, but then there's special events. You mentioned, Chuck, budgeting. A lot of people don't know how to create a budget and then how it's submitted. And different churches have different processes with that. Think also policies and procedures. So like even planning an event. So how do I put that on the church calendar? How do I order things? All that type of stuff. Who's going to clean it up? Do we have a team or does facilities come in? So all of those little bitty details that maybe wasn't explained to you, as Amanda said, they didn't tell me this in the job description, those type of things, I think, are really important for people to understand that there is more to the job.
No, that's so good. I think Delaney really spoke well about just the structure of a job, that you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. And I want to speak a little bit more to the heart of when you get into a new job, there are things that have always been established that now you're having to say, okay, here's a culture that I'm coming into that maybe I agree or disagree with how things are done. And now I've got to shift. And there's some insecurity that comes into play at that point of like, do I have what it takes to shift the culture? Can I change our curriculum? Like, what if I know that this volunteer is not doing a good job leading this small group of kids? Like, do I, like, what are they going to say when I need to make some changes? And so I would say those first few years, and I say years because it's a long game. Like, we don't come into our jobs and everything changes overnight, even if we pray really hard. We're playing the long game. So over the few years, we have to really establish rhythms of seeking wisdom, asking good questions, patience, a lot of listening to just people who have a lot of opinions. That's the first few. I mean, that really never stops. But those first few years, especially if you're coming after somebody else who had been established for a long time, people have concerns and they just want to know that they're going to be heard. And so I would say, encourage you as a new to ministry person, as you are looking at the grand picture of your job, don't feel like you have to conquer it overnight. But instead, use these first months to start gaining wisdom. That's why I love like the New to Ministry conference, is that it's just another chance for you to come and to be surrounded by other people who want to encourage you, uplift you, and help give you discernment over maybe how to navigate some of those changes.
Really good high-level list of the wide variety of things that we need to be aware of, eyes wide open. And I do think so many folks these days find themselves into a church role, a ministry role, even in leadership, where they probably weren't well prepared for the role that they are placed into, right? And that's why this kind of training is so important. It's because we get dropped in and we're very willing. We have a passion for kids and for students. We love the Word of God. We love Jesus. We want to complete the mission of the Great Commission, right, through our ministries. But we're not well equipped. We're dropped into the deep end and we have to figure it out. And so for me, going back, Emily, what you said about how much of the role is administrative in nature, my goodness, I feel like that is a light bulb moment for a lot of people, or the splash of cold water in the face, however you want to characterize it, where we're like, I'm great with kids. I'm good with middle schoolers. I'll take the job. What a great thing. I get to do this full time. I can
preach all day.
I can teach all day. Yeah. Yes, I want to get paid and do that full time. Sign me up. And then it's like, there's budgets and calendars, and
I've got to plan a whole VBS. Are you kidding me?
Right.
I have to start months ahead to plan the VBS. I can't do that within a week or two.
That's right. You've got all the planning, all the things of being an event coordinator that are a part of it. Then there's dealing with, the procedures and processes and protocols, all the legal things we have to be aware. There's just so much that so many people, I fear, are blindsided by those things that we need to be really aware of those needs.
Yeah.
I did some research several years back, just a simple study that's like, and it showed that, the typical kids or student minister spends less than 4 hours a week actually with kids or students. And so if you work just a 40-hour work week, that's a little bit of a wink and a tongue in cheek, right? Because we know even part-time ministry is full-time work, and full-time ministry is way more than 40 hours a week. But even if it's just a 40-hour week, less than 10% of your time will be actually spent with kids or students. Yep. And so where does the other 90% go? And that's where I think to be successful, we need to find that right balance. And so much of that is about clarifying expectations.
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing we want for ministry leaders, the last thing we want for ministry leaders to happen to them is burnout, discouragement. And that's where it comes, is that you're like, I thought here was my expectations, right? And here's my reality. And like, how do I how do I marry these two together and say, like, is there a place where I can meet them? Is there a place where I can lay down my own expectations and know that just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right.
Just because it's not as simple or straightforward or what I had imagined in my head, that it's still where God has me. And so that's what
Well, and that might
that's what I
be
love about this conversation.
that might be a really great big takeaway for a listener is just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong. Expect it to be hard. Expect it to be hard. Expect it to be work. There's a reason, right? It's called the job. It's work. It takes effort. There's strain and stress that come with it. And so don't expect that it should just all be super easy and come naturally. There's a reason that not everyone does this. And so, there's work. So as we talk about like some of those big things and you guys in your experiences in interacting with new leaders, what are some of those, I think about the jar, like putting the big rocks in first. What are some of those big rock items that you would recommend as you've interacted with different leaders who have stepped into new roles that we need to look at first or that we need to take care of right away early on? Now, Amanda, I think it's really noteworthy that you also said, don't expect this to be an instant quick thing. Expect it to take a year and a half, or years before you really get good at your role. So where should we start? What are those big things that you guys are like, man, if you're just going to get one or two or three things down at the very beginning, what do you need to establish well from the onset?
I would say trust and building relationships. I mean, when it all comes down to it, we're in the people business. And so that is getting to know the kids, the volunteers, the parents, your church staff. Also, just getting to know the history. Like Amanda was saying, listen to things, learn what happened before you, ask questions. And so you're building trust with a lot of different people. But I would say that is probably the number one thing that, again, it's going to take time to do that, but you need that trust and that those relationships that you're building to help set that foundation. And then I would also say safety and security is a big one, that you need to make sure that there is safety and security in your ministries, looking forward to see, okay, what are some steps that maybe we aren't where we need to be, but then set that timeline of what that looks like. Again, that's not going to happen overnight, but definitely the relationships, I would say, is the biggest key.
So when you say safety and security, let's get a little closer to that one for a minute. Spend another second here. When you say safety and security, what kind of things are in your mind? I think that looks really different in preschool and children than it does in student ministry. We have security people who patrol the building in the parking lot in some of those cases. You're probably talking more about check-in systems and procedures of not having, one adult alone with kids. Delanee, what are a few of those high-level things that you would say are important for us to know in terms of kids ministry security measures?
Right. Definitely. You hit on the main ones with that. I think it's also the enlistment process for your volunteers. So your volunteers that are in place, what has been done to not only do background checks, but have there been interviews? Have there been reference checks? All of that. What training have your volunteers gone through for that security awareness and all? So, and I think a lot of that with the enlistment goes for kids and students. And really, all minors need to go through that. And just one little note about that for our ministers, that is a huge job that is not yours alone. That is something that belongs to the whole church. And so as I say that, a lot of it is looking at and assessing where we are, where your ministry is and where it needs to go. But that's something that you can't do alone. And you need to make sure that you have the buy-in of your leadership, of your supervisor, if that's a pastor, or another staff member and the pastor. They need to all be on board. So it's not just your rules, but it's the church policies.
Yeah, those are the kind of things that you don't want to have to be the sole person responsible anyway, right? It's always safer for you to make sure that you have a leader or others around you who have confirmed and affirmed that the protocol that's in place is good and adequate. So you want to be careful not to be the one who's the only person left holding the bag if there were an unfortunate incident that were to happen. We want to do everything we can to be extra cautious and careful, especially in terms of safety with children. Yeah. You mentioned relationships and trust. Amanda, where would you go next?
Yeah, I got to have a fun conversation this past week with a women's minister who's been in her role for about a year. And, she was talking about that there's already so much happening at the church. She doesn't even know where to begin, right? Mm-hmm. And she doesn't know what her priorities should be. And so my encouragement to her, and this is my encouragement for those of you who are listening, is you need to look at the mission and culture and values of your church as a whole first. And so before you're like, hello, I'm Amanda, I'm the new children's minister, and I would like to make this the Amanda ministry.
Right.
Instead, you need to look at, okay, First Baptist, we need to look at, hey, this is the priorities of our church, okay? Yeah. And if this is the priorities of my church and of my pastor, how does that reflect the ministry that now I'm in charge of leading? So if discipleship is a priority, if missions is a priority, if relationships or small groups, like whatever that looks like, to not make, because when we get into a new job, we want to do 100 different things, right?
Right.
But my recommendation is let's look at what the priorities of the church are, and then look at your ministry and say, okay, here are the things that if I were to address to find my big rocks, okay?
Yes.
My big rocks here, what is my pastor's priorities for me, and aligning them. And sometimes your pastor will tell you straight up, like, hey, I just need somebody to like get more volunteers. Like that's a priority for me. But other times they're just like, here you go. We don't really know what to do with these children, but you are here now. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you figure it out. Some of us are in that position.
Yeah. And so I do think that taking some time to really like think and ask God, okay, Lord, you've given me this ministry at this specific church, okay, with this specific pastor and this specific leadership. How do I steward it well? Yeah. And aligning it.
I think that's a really good word. The idea that your ministry isn't your ministry, right? It's an extension of the church and the context you're in. And there's a reality for many of us. You won't stay in that same church for your entire ministry career. You may move from one to another. And so therefore we need to find that balance of how do we bring the gifts and abilities that God has given and passions that he's given you as an individual to use them within the culture and mission and vision and values of a specific congregation, right? So that you can influence it, but not turn it into you so that when you leave, it loses its identity.
And it helps keep us from focusing on the main thing. Because I think sometimes we get so excited about something else that our pastor doesn't actually want us to focus on. And we spin our wheels over here and we're exhausted that when the time comes to focus on the things that our leadership wants us to focus on, we're done. We're tired. We have nothing left to give. And so to help make sure we're prioritizing our time and our space and our money with the right things that align with the whole vision of the church.
Yeah, good word. Because if we come in with our own vision that is disconnected from the rest of the church in the next gen space, kids, students, middle school, preschool, if any of those areas, if our vision is disconnected, if it's divorced from that of the rest of the church, it's not going to work. And so it's going to be divisive. So we need to figure out how to contextualize our unique presence and what it is that we bring in a way that is supportive of that context. And Delanee, I want to get back to what you said about relationships and trust, because you need to know who you need to know. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned we need to know our kids and our students. Absolutely. I think most of us would get that. But we need to know in the church which of our leaders need to be included in decisions, right? To what degree do we have authority or autonomy or accountability, where we need to know when we need to ask and when we can just do something. So we need to know who to talk to about that. And then we also will learn pretty quickly that there are certain lay people who are very influential in our spaces or have ideas about our spaces. They may be volunteers or parents that we need to get to know them. So how would you go about identifying those people, and how do you go about creating those strong relationships that are so crucial?
Great question. And I wish I had here's step A, B, and C.
You don't have that?
I wish I did.
Sounds like a new concept session.
Baptist are you?
I know, right? I will say a lot of it is sometimes observation and just being very keen on, like you're saying, those discussions or the work of the church. Also, I think it's maybe asking some of those questions, asking who those people are. I remember in one of the churches where I served, thinking about, okay, who are some parents that are key lay people, like you said, that I need to get to know. Yes, you want to get to know them all, but who are some that I really need to invest in and also earn that trust? And so a lot of times it was those that I would see are the leaders among the groups or in their friend group, or the ones that also, were very involved, but also just looking about. And like I said, asking questions and seeing who many times are vocal about things, and just maybe it might be that they're on the committees or they're good friends with some of the other leadership in the church. And I think the key too is to develop a genuine trust with them. Not that you're doing it because you're like, oh, I know this person is influential, but because people can tell when it's not genuine.
Yeah, right. So we're not recommending that you try to play the game and figure out who to manipulate. Exactly. Not at all. No, that's not the point. That's a good point of clarity. But you need to have people around you who you can ask questions of, right? Who can help you understand the culture and the values.
Right. And there were some times that I would run some ideas by some of those people to get feedback, to be like, hey, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And then they could also be like, hey, here are some concerns maybe in that, or I really like that. And then they would also be the ones that whenever we were rolling out a change or something like that, if other people had questions, they
can
might
help
not
you answer them.
Yeah. And so that was great too. But I think a lot of it is just gradually building those relationships with them. It might be something that you have a commonality with them that even might not be church related, but just, spending time with them, sharing your story, asking their story about, just even sharing about how you came to the church, how the Lord led you there. And then just over time, inviting them into your ministry, if you will, if there's a way that they can help or support, to let them get a glimpse of it and see it.
You need to have people who are your people, right? You need to have people you can call upon in a time of need, either to help. I would call that a player. And you also need people who are prayers, right? You need people who maybe don't volunteer, but they care about you and your success in your ministry, where you can call on them to be your air support, your prayer team.
Right. And Chuck, something else is thinking about one way to get to know people that might not be in your specific ministry area is that you're involved in a ministry of the church that isn't directly related to your ministry. I have a friend that a lot of times says you need to be a part of a Bible study that you aren't leading, that you don't have responsibilities of. And so the thought there is, of course, you're not going to do that on Sunday morning. You're going to be where you need to be, not, sacrificing of your responsibilities, but it also gives you the ability to get to know people that you might not see in your ministry, each week. And then it also allows you to get to know some of those other leaders.
And a great way to get to know the values of the church that you're in, right? If it's not your church. There are other people who get a role in a church that they've been attending for many years, and they already are an insider. But even then, the dynamic changes so much when you're an official staffer and you see all the behind the scenes kind
I
of
was going to say the
things.
curtains pull back.
Right. And it's not all pretty, right? Because the inside stuff is more complicated than I think most people would ever know. So maybe for some of us, that's part of the wake up call is, boy, this is way different than it looks like when I just show up on Sunday and participate. So Amanda, one of the things that a lot of people come in with, and you touched on this already, is, I feel like when I come in this job, what I want to do is make big changes. And a lot of us have ideas that are different than our predecessors had done it or how they had done it. And so we might come in with an inclination that we're going to mix it up, switch it up, change it up, new curriculum, new time schedules, new volunteer, and change everything. To what degree would you say that's wise or unwise?
Well,
I'm
I'll
trying
say
to set you the softball.
Church people don't like change. It's shocker. I mean, it's human nature. I think
change is hard for people.
Right. We are comfortable with what we know. We love convenience. We love mentally safe spaces.
We like our routines. Yep.
Yeah. Predictability. There's just an anticipation that we know. So all that to say is change is hard, but it's necessary. A lot of times I think that anytime that you're not willing to change or willing to do something different is you're just saying, culture's not changing, culture's not shifting. I mean, your church, where it was 10 years ago, is not the same church that it was today. And if it is the same church, I would say, where are all the new people? Because it likely hasn't changed because there's no new people to speak into it. So I do think that as culture changes, as people shift, change is a natural thing, especially with a new leader. There's new vision. I mean, each of us have been in a position where there was somebody before us. And so all that to say is change is good. But like I said before, change also doesn't happen overnight.
And probably it shouldn't happen overnight.
It shouldn't.
Right?
I would say we probably have all served for a boss that comes in and he's new and he just immediately just wants to start changing everything.
And it's scary.
Because he knows it all. Yeah, it's very scary. Some changes are good. Some changes you're like, no, we don't do it for a very particular reason.
Right.
So if you spent, an hour with us, you would understand why we do it this way.
Right.
And so I would say, sit with your people, build relationships with your people, build trust with your people, learn the culture. Maybe they're ready for change. Okay. And maybe that change can come a little sooner. Maybe it's a safety concern. You're like, I have to make this change. This is a necessary, we cannot wait for this change
Must
to
be
happen.
Addressed immediately. Yeah.
Yes. Our children need name tags. Okay. That's a necessary, a necessary change. And so, but being willing to observe, to sit back, to not come at it from a prideful perspective of I know it all, or we did it this way at my last church.
Right.
But to say, or you know what, I'm going to learn the culture. I'm going to learn the people. And some of the most loving things you can do is just be patient.
For sure. Yeah, I would tend to say be slow and intentional. So now, taking into consideration, if there are crisis considerations or situations where there is a lack of safety, or address it immediately. Yes.
Yeah.
But when it comes to making big culture changes or big changes that would cause you to create disruption, we need to be really cautious about going too quickly into those spaces and going alone. Right. So that comes back to the relational connection. Make sure you have buy-in from the right people. As we talk about, one of you mentioned, ask questions. Asking questions is such a great place to begin a conversation about change. And so I like to encourage people to ask why and what if. Yeah. Why do we do it this way? What if we were to make this adjustment? And just listen, ask those questions without saying, here's what we're doing, right? We don't come in with a hammer. That's a good way to lose a lot of your volunteers and even people from your church. But to come in and ask those clarifying questions. Why do we do this? What if we considered this? And then listen.
That's so good.
And Chuck, I think even to go on further, like you're saying, asking those questions, when it's time to implement a change, making sure that you share the why. Yes. Why are we making this change? Because people are more likely to follow the what when they understand the why. Yeah. So they need to know the why and then the how. Because if we don't communicate those details to them, they will fill them in themselves. And many times when they're filling it in, it's not accurate over what we were planning on doing. So just helping them understand the why before they follow the what.
I think that's so wise, Delaney. I've heard it before. Someone said, "Oh, I could blindly trust that leader," and I'm like, "You should never blindly trust a
That's right.
leader,
Or anyone for
like,
that matter.
please never blindly trust anyone, because the Holy Spirit lives inside of us. Therefore, like your congregation, your volunteers also have the Holy Spirit inside of them, and so if you're not communicating the why, the Holy Spirit's going to be setting off some red flags in their spirit about it. And so letting them in on what God's doing and also allowing feedback too. So when you share changes early enough, being able to maybe hear some of that feedback with an open mind, open heart to say, okay, here where you're coming from. Maybe we can make this small adjustment, or hey, actually, I didn't think of it this way. But yeah, just being understanding that your people also have the Holy Spirit inside of them. And so to be willing to tend to their souls well and to be receptive to what God is doing in their lives.
Good word. Good word. So another thing that we might move into in our conversation is talking about some good habits or some best practices that we might want to establish. So obviously, communication is a big one, right? We need to communicate to clarify expectations. We need to know, where are we? Where do we have autonomy? Where do we have accountability? The only way to know is to ask the questions. We also need to communicate well with the people that we lead. And so I would say one of those things that I think would be a great practice or habit to initiate, if it doesn't already exist, or to continue if it does, is regular training interactions within your church that clarify expectations for your volunteers that you're leading, and that equip them well to understand and fulfill the mission of the why, including the what and the how. So I would say setting up those kind of training cadences, and that could be a quarterly training, a couple times a year with a big training where you bring in food and do a long half day or something. But it can also just be little huddles that you do on a Wednesday night before youth group, or that you do on a Sunday morning between services, where you can speak little bits of investment into people.
Yeah, that's so good. I think that is something that we do feel there's that tension of our people's schedules are already so busy. Like, I don't want to add something else, but clarity is kindness. Like, there's nothing that you like. Oversharing is, telling them something, that they don't need to hear. But you can never overshare information that they need to know. Like, they need to know it. You should share it and find the time. And so we at the church that I was on staff at, our kids ministry had a 15-minute huddle every Sunday before. So if the doors open at 9:15 for parents to drop off kids, we met in a room at 9:00 with all of our leaders. And so then you're only asking 15 more minutes where they are likely already going to be at church mingling with their friends. And so I think that's a great way to communicate stuff. And if it's every week, you don't always have to make it, here's some big change we're doing. Here's what it could just be, that relational building. And so, it's that brick by brick moment versus sometimes there needs to be a quarterly training. And I think that's important, but finding rhythms that already exist just to be able to communicate and have those lines.
Good word. Open. Rhythm is a good word. Delaney, what would you add?
I'd also say, just as you're saying, there's different types of trainings, and those huddles and those large trainings, love those because it helps also build community. But I think even sending short videos, maybe you film a 1 or 2 minute thing each week or every other week, or you send a tip a week. If it's about even just understanding the development of kids or students to help them, or maybe it's sharing a podcast episode or an article on the blog, but sending that to them, even if it's just a few minutes a week or every 2 weeks, is also a great rhythm to where they're gaining knowledge. And a lot of times I don't think we think of that as being training, but it is a form of training as well.
That's great.
Good stuff. All right, guys. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, thinking back through all the things we've touched on, or things that maybe we haven't yet, if you were going to offer one call out or one big thing that you would say, with all the swirling that's going on when you're new, don't miss this one thing that I would say is so crucial, what would that thing be for you?
Go ahead, Delaney.
Wow, so many things. I would say, and this is something we really haven't touched on as much, but taking care of you. That's spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, and socially, in all the ways, taking care of you and remembering that your relationship with the Lord is the most important of anything. As Amanda said, I mean, you're going to get the vision from the Lord. And the direction and the strength, everything that needs to be done. I'd also even say going on with that is drawing healthy boundaries, because you're in it for the long run, if you will. Now, of course, you want to have a great work ethic, but also knowing that it's going to take time and you have to take care of you and establish those boundaries early on. One other thing that a mentor shared with me when I was starting a ministry, and I thought it was one of the best pieces of advice. He said, find someone that has been in ministry longer than you, at least a few years, that you can call on day or night the first 18 months of ministry. So you have someone that you can call, ask questions about, but then also helps you process some of those things that you have a friend that doesn't share the same pastor as you, that will help you process some of those things. And maybe, that might be a good change, but you need to slow that down a little bit. Or maybe, here's some other ways to build trust, that type of thing. Having a mentor that you can go to that will pour into you, I think is really important.
Good tips. All right, Amanda.
Delanee stole all of mine.
How dare she?
Sorry,
It always happens
Amanda.
when you
Just
go
kidding. That
around the
means you're
circle.
good.
It always
I know.
happens.
No, I'll leave it with this, and I think this is it's just something that God continually reminds me of, and it's His Word. And Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. New to ministry, there's a lot of paths you got to choose, and we are not smart enough to do it on our own. But I do believe, and I have witnessed it in my life and the lives of many friends in ministry, we trust in God, we acknowledge Him, we set our eyes on Him. He's faithful, and He will give us the wisdom to know what to do.
Wonderful. Amanda Mejias, Delanee Williams, thank you both for being here today and for sharing with us.
Having us.
So many things to talk about. Any one of those could be a whole episode. And I know that this is a fire hose for all of those who are new in their roles. Listeners, thank you for listening. And I hope that you will latch on to some key principles here. My encouragement would be, don't try to do it all. Don't try to take it all in at once. It's so much. You need to prioritize in some of those key things that we identified here: relationships with volunteers, with kids, with your leaders, with people within your church, understanding the mission and vision, taking care of those urgencies like safety and security, and then figuring out how you can make appropriate changes in the right time frame to move your ministry forward in a way that is aligned with the vision of your church. It's so great, guys, to find other people that you can connect with who can encourage you. So find that friend, look for that mentor, find that person who's a little farther down the road than you are.
We'll
and
be your friend.
Maybe, just maybe, those friends are Amanda or Delanee or me or others that you know. We've got other great friends who are a part of your team. Zach Workin is one of those who are available and accessible to you. We want to be here for you. So we do create curriculum and Bible study resources. We would love to have you use those. But what our heart beats for here is to equip you for the ministry to kids and students that God has called you to. And so we would love for you to use our resources, but we would really love to be your friends and to be those who are the lifters of your head and of your arms when you are in hard times, and to help set you up for success. You can find out more about us and all we do in the show notes, but let me send you to a couple key URLs that may help you, okay? So if you're looking for kids resources, lifeway.com/kids will get you everything you need to find. If you're looking for student ministry resources, Bible studies, devos, curriculum, lifeway.com/students. Those two places will get you to everything If you're specifically looking for curriculum, I would direct you to 2 pages that we have made to help you find the right resource for you. Lifeway.com/ I already gave that one. Donnie, let's pick it up from here. Teachkids.lifeway.com and reachteens.lifeway.com. These 2 web pages are places where you can, are you ready? As a new leader, where you can see, show, share, and compare the 4 different curriculum resources that we create in Lifeway Next Gen for kids and student ministries. You can see them side by side in one easy place, so you can decide which one is the best fit for the church where you are serving. Thank you for listening. Thanks again, Amanda and Delanee. And listeners, we'll see you back again soon for another episode of the Etch Next Gen Ministry Podcast. This episode of the Etch Next Gen Ministry Podcast was brought to you by our amazing team. Executive producer, Angie Elkins. Producer, Nikki Ogden. And recorded in the Lifeway Podcast Studio in Brentwood, Tennessee. With sound engineer, Donnie Gordon. Artwork by Cameron Wilson. And I'm your host, Chuck Peters. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Etch.